OK 啦。OK， 唔該晒咁多位。
Thank you all.
Good
afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's press conference. The Chief Executive will first speak before answering questions. Because of the epidemic, please keep social distance. If there are no questions, we'll first hear from the Chief Executive. Good afternoon, friends from the media and members of the public. This morning, the 13th National People's Congress Standing Committee voted on the amended Annex 1 and Annex 2 of the Basic Law to improve the electoral system of Hong Kong SAR. This is in line with our constitutional order, the actual situation of Hong Kong, and it also implements the concept of patriots administering Hong Kong. I and the governing team of the Hong Kong SAR strongly support the amended Annexes 1 and 2. On the 30th of June, the NPC endorsed the national security law. This is in line with the attempt to improve the constitutional structure of Hong Kong. This is a major exercise. This will keep Hong Kong on the right track to implement the one country, two system, and to keep us along the right path. The Annexes 1 and 2, amended by the NPCSC, have been published. We have also produced this booklet. We will start our publicity campaign to explain to the public. We will organize seminars and talks to explain the content of the amended Annexes 1 and 2. I'd like to express my gratitude to the central authorities for their support in the amendment exercise of Annexes 1 and 2. I thank them for incorporating my suggestions in the process. Central authorities have met with over about 1,000 people to listen to their views at the beginning of the month. The Hong Kong SARG has also set up a dedicated website. We will keep updating the website to disseminate information in important work in this regard by explaining to the public. I will give you more information of our work to improve our electoral system. We will dovetail our work with the decision. First of all, we will explain to the public. This is very important because our exercise to improve the Hong Kong electoral system, it is conducive to whether we will be able to focus on economic development, improving people's livelihood, and to ensure long-term stability and prosperity. With the legislation of the national security law, Hong Kong society as a whole has seen stability and peace again. But we do need political security and safety in order to forge an overall safe and secure environment to equip ourselves to brace the challenges posed by economic downturn. This will also enable us to respond better to livelihood aspirations. We'll continue with our work with the explanation. After we have introduced the bill to the Electoral, we will need to work harder to explain not just to the public but to the Electoral as well. The second stage of our work is local legislation. Different from the legislation of national security law, which is a national which is a national law promulgated in Annex 3. On the 30th of June in 2019, I have signed a gazette to legislate national security law. There was no need to take up any local legislation work in that regard. However, when it comes to our electoral legislation, we've always done it by way of local legislation. With the amended annexes 1 and 2, we have to embark on local legislation, local legislative amendment. There is no time to lose. We will work out a timetable to table and introduce the bill to the Electoral. There will be three elections in the coming year. The election committee election, Electoral election, as well as the election of the chief executive. When everything is ready, we will lose no time to make preparations for these three elections. As you can see from the amended annexes 1 and 2, there are details specified in the amendment. In general, in our local legislative exercise, we will have to turn the content of the amended annexes 1 and 2 into local legislation. You may notice that in these two annexes, there are provisions stating that, the details are to be specified in local legislation. You will see in the future that we will faithfully implement the content of annexes 1 and 2. We will also deal with matters that are to be handled by local legislation. There are a number of these issues. First, how to delineate statutory associations, relevant associations, and eligible associations and institutions. All these specified associations and institutions will become members of the election committee in Annex 1. They are official members, nominated members, and elected members. The second area we have to work on is the Candidate Eligibility Review Committee. You're all very concerned about the composition of this committee. Details are not specified in the annex. That is, it will have to be done by way of local legislation. We will specify the composition and operation of the review committee.
The third area is about the delineation of geographical constituencies in the electoral elections. With the amendments to Annex 2, electoral members returned by geographical constituencies would go from 35 seats to 20 seats across 10 constituencies, with 2 seats at each constituency. And as such, delineation is needed in this regard. As for the actual electoral arrangements, such as nominations, election, or voting, we will take this opportunity to deal with issues encountered in the previous polling day. We will provide priority queues for the elderly or pregnant women, as well as electronic voting. These would be stipulated by way of local legislation. And in terms of timeline, time is indeed very tight. We have explained the relevant timeline in the booklet. Our goal is to introduce the bill to the Legislative Council by mid-April. So we are only about 2 weeks from the middle of April. And like the Permanent Secretary said at Electoral, we have to amend some 20 pieces of main and subsidiary legislation, so the workload is certainly very heavy. We will do our best so that we can introduce the bill 2 weeks from now. It will be an omnibus bill. Even if we are to amend 5 pieces of main legislation, the other items of subsidiary legislation would be included in one omnibus bill for the sake of convenience. Hopefully, the scrutiny of the bill and the third reading could be completed by the end of May, and after that we would begin the next stage of work. Assuming that the bill is passed by May, we will proceed to voter registration in June. Since the electoral base would have changed as a result of the amendments, voter registration must start anew, including the election committee subsectors and the electoral election. Our plan is to first deal with the elections for the election committee subsectors in September. By December, we will have the general election for the 7th electoral, and in March next year, we will have the chief executive election. Perhaps the question is what the arrangements for the current term Legislative Council will be. It will remain in operation till the 7th general election of Electoral. Normally, there will be a termination arrangement to allow members to be nominated and run for the next term. In other words, the current term of Electoral will continue till mid-December. I met the Electoral President, Mr. Andrew Leung, earlier today, and we talked about the need for continuation of Electoral, and there is a clear constitutional basis due to the epidemic. The 7th general election of Electoral was postponed for a year, and the MPCSC made a decision to deal with the vacuum at Electoral, and the arrangement was to allow the current term Electoral to continue for no more than 1 year. So a further continuation of 1 month is sound from a constitutional basis, but amendments to local legislation would be needed. Under the emergency regulations, we have stipulated that the current the election this year will take place on the 5th of September. And I informed Mr. Andrew Leung of the situation, and I hope that he would consider allowing the current term Electoral to continue for a few more months. Apart from the bills being considered at Electoral and the complicated electoral legislation that is underway, we have 16 more items of legislation, including the bills covering areas of concern. For instance, the introduction of non-locally trained doctors, arrangements or legislation on protecting personal data privacy, etc. Meanwhile, at the Finance Committee, more than $100 billion worth of funds are pending approval by Electoral. Earlier today, the Electoral President indicated to the media that he is happy to complement our work and continue the work of Electoral till December, and this summer there will not be a long recess as usual. I think this is a manifestation of the relationship or checks and balances between the legislature and executive. So I'd like to express my gratitude to Mr. Leung and all the Legislative Council members. Going forward, we will fully support the work of Electoral in scrutinizing this omnibus bill on electoral legislation. I will pause here. I believe there will be a number of questions. Myself, Mr. Chang, and Roy will try to answer them as much as we can. Please identify your organization before you speak. We have a large number of journalists, so please limit yourself to no more than 2 questions. The gentleman on the front row, please. I'm from Hong Kong, and my name is Pang. One of the key areas of the reform is the new Candidate Eligibility Review Committee. You said details would be announced when we reach the stage of local legislation.